He had been walking the narrow trail for hours, the forest quiet except for the occasional crack of twigs underfoot. Then he froze. A shadow moved across the path. His heart raced as he realized a massive grizzly stood directly ahead. It didn't move. It didn't growl. It just stared, unblinking. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, but there was nowhere to go. The bear refused to let him pass. And as he took a cautious step back, he noticed its gaze wasn't just watchful, it was deliberate. Something about the way it held its position suggested a story he didn't understand yet, a reason he couldn't fathom. He had always thought he knew the wilderness, but this encounter was different. This was personal. And he could feel the tension in the air tighten like a drawn bow. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. He had set out before dawn, hoping to enjoy the solitude of the trail, a winding stretch of wilderness he had hiked countless times before. The forest was alive with quiet motion, a flock of birds lifting in unison, the soft rustle of leaves as a breeze passed through, the distant murmur of a stream tumbling over rocks. It was serene, almost hypnotic, a perfect escape from the bustle of his city life. He had always respected the forest. Years of hiking and camping had taught him patience, caution, and the importance of reading the subtle signs that nature gave. Broken branches, fresh tracks in the mud, scat, he knew the language of the wild. But nothing could have prepared him for what came next. The path narrowed as it wound around a dense copse of trees. Sunlight dappled the forest floor in irregular patches, illuminating moss-covered rocks and fallen leaves. He was moving carefully, keeping a watchful eye on the trail ahead. The forest seemed normal, almost comforting. Then he noticed movement, a ripple in the underbrush, a dark shape shifting among the trees. At first, he thought it was another hiker, maybe a wildlife photographer like himself, moving stealthily to catch a perfect shot. But as the shape came into clearer view, he realized it wasn't human. His heart skipped a beat. The creature stepped onto the path, fully visible now, a massive grizzly, easily taller than him on its hind legs, its fur glistening in the sunlight. The bear's presence dominated the path, its sheer bulk filling the space in front of him. Every instinct in his body screamed danger. The bear didn't make a sound. It simply stood there, immovable, staring directly at him. Its dark eyes were fixed, intense, almost intelligent. The way it held its stance suggested more than mere curiosity, it was assessing him, sizing him up, as though it were aware of his every thought. He froze. One wrong move could provoke it. One sudden step could trigger a charge that would be impossible to outrun. He slowly took a step back, careful not to make any sudden movements. His eyes never left the bear. The path behind him offered little escape, steep slopes and tangled roots. Ahead was blocked. To his left, the forest thickened into impassable underbrush. To the right, the path curved down toward a creek, but it was slippery and unstable. He realized, with a sinking feeling, that he was trapped. The bear shifted slightly, its massive head tilting to the side, nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air. It didn't roar, didn't snarl, didn't even grunt. Its calm demeanor was unsettling. It was as if the bear had claimed the path as its own and intended for him to understand that he would not pass. His mind raced through possible strategies: retreat slowly, remain motionless, speak softly, but none of them seemed sufficient. He had studied bear behavior extensively, knew when to act aggressively, when to submit, but this encounter felt different. He could see the bear's muscles ripple under its thick fur as it shifted its weight. It wasn't showing signs of immediate aggression, yet the very fact that it refused to move was a threat in itself. Time seemed to stretch. Each second was heavy, filled with the raw energy of predator and prey locked in a silent standoff. He felt the sweat bead on his forehead despite the cool morning air. His hands, steady a moment ago, now trembled slightly around the straps of his backpack. He tried to calm himself. The forest around them was quiet now, almost unnaturally so. Even the birds seemed to have sensed the tension, their songs fading to distant whispers. He thought about the stories he had heard from local rangers, encounters with bears that ended in tragedy, hikers unprepared for the raw power of these magnificent animals. He had always respected wildlife from a distance, but this was different. He was face to face with one, caught in a confrontation that required more than knowledge. It required instinct. He shifted his weight slightly, testing the bear's reaction. It remained steadfast. There was no movement, no indication it would yield. Panic threatened to take hold, but he forced himself to breathe deeply, counting each inhale and exhale. He couldn't let fear override judgment. Every hiker he had ever spoken to had emphasized the same principle: do not run, do not scream, do not turn your back. Yet standing there, trapped on the narrow path, he realized that knowledge alone offered little comfort. He glanced down the trail behind him, imagining a safe exit, imagining the ground giving way beneath the bear's weight, imagining a distraction that could allow him to slip past. Nothing seemed feasible. The bear's eyes never left his. It was as if the animal understood the choices he had, the limited options, and was silently demanding that he respect its space. Minutes stretched. He remained frozen, every nerve in his body alert. He thought about the bear cubs he had seen earlier on the hike, and wondered if this bear was protecting something nearby. Was it a mother? Was there a den hidden from view? The thought added a new layer of tension. The bear wasn't just blocking his path, it was guarding, enforcing a boundary he had stumbled into unknowingly. He slowly crouched, trying to appear smaller, less threatening. The bear watched. It made no move. It simply stood, a living wall, immovable and immense. He whispered softly to himself, words meant more for reassurance than communication: "It's okay. Just let me pass. I don't want trouble." But the bear didn't respond. Of course, it couldn't. Yet its presence was a message all the same: this trail was not his to claim, and he would have to earn the right to move forward, or turn back under the bear's watchful gaze. And then, as he considered retreat, a sudden sound shattered the fragile tension, a twig snapping underfoot somewhere in the brush to his left. The bear's ears twitched. Its head turned sharply, eyes narrowing. The forest seemed to hold its breath. His heart pounded in his chest. Something was moving in the shadows, something unseen. And in that heartbeat, he realized the path forward might not just be blocked by a bear, but by forces he hadn't anticipated. Before he could react, the bear shifted its massive body slightly, stepping closer, but not in aggression, almost as if it were guiding him or testing him. His breath caught. What was it trying to tell him? And then, from the corner of his eye, he noticed movement behind the trees, a shadow, watching, waiting, and suddenly, he understood this encounter was only the beginning. He stayed perfectly still, barely daring to breathe. The bear's gaze bore into him, a dark, fathomless pool of awareness. Each second stretched longer than the last, the forest around them holding an almost unnatural silence. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if nature itself were holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The man could feel the weight of the bear's presence, pressing on him in a way that no human could simulate. He had faced dangers in the past, wild animals at a distance, but nothing had ever carried such immediate, intimate force. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, but he knew even a slow backward step could be interpreted as weakness. Bears, he reminded himself, are predators as much as they are cautious creatures. They understand confidence and fear. In that tense moment, confidence was impossible, but he had to convey calm. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he lowered his gaze and spoke softly, words escaping in a whisper, more a murmured plea than an attempt at communication. "It's okay. I mean no harm." The bear didn't move. It simply shifted its massive weight, the ground trembling slightly beneath its claws. Its head tilted slightly, sniffing the air, nostrils flaring with a slow rhythm. The sheer size of it made his chest tighten, every breath felt shallow. He realized how close he had come to underestimating the creature, the way he had always admired bears from afar in documentaries, never truly imagining their power in raw, uncontained proximity. This bear wasn't just an animal in the forest, it was an elemental force, a living embodiment of the wilderness, and he had stumbled directly into its domain. A distant rustling echoed from deeper in the woods. His head jerked instinctively toward the noise. The bear's ears twitched. Its gaze snapped toward the movement, and he could see the muscles in its neck flex. He couldn't tell if it was an ally or a threat, but the bear's attention was now divided. The momentary distraction gave him a tiny surge of hope. Perhaps he could move past, find a narrow route to bypass it. Yet the bear's body still partially blocked the path, a living barrier that demanded recognition. As he calculated, he noticed subtle details he hadn't before. The bear's fur was mottled with dark streaks, suggesting battles survived, perhaps scratches from other encounters in the wild. Its paws were enormous, the claws curved and sharp enough to rend trees if necessary. But more striking than the raw power was the bear's eyes, intelligent, almost human in the way they tracked his every movement. He wondered, not for the first time, whether this standoff was as much a test of patience as it was of physical dominance. He slowly moved his hand to his backpack strap, almost to reassure himself, almost as if touching the leather would give him a semblance of control. But the bear's eyes followed the movement, unwavering. It shifted slightly again, a subtle step that seemed calculated, not aggressive. He froze immediately. There was a strange deliberation in its stance, as if it were not simply a creature of instinct but an observer, watching him, weighing him, gauging his intentions. The forest itself seemed to respond to the tension. Birds lifted from the canopy in sudden, frantic bursts of flight. A squirrel darted across the trail, its small body a blur against the underbrush. The man's heart raced, every pulse echoing in his ears. He could feel sweat trickling down his spine. His breath came shallow, uneven. And yet, amidst the fear, a strange fascination bloomed. He had read about the profound emotional intelligence of bears, their ability to perceive and react to human behavior. Now he was experiencing it firsthand. Minutes passed, each one stretched thin with silent calculation. Then the bear did something unexpected. It lowered its massive head toward the ground, sniffing something just off the path. The man froze. Was it about to charge, or was it distracted? He didn't dare move. The tension hung in the air like a tangible weight, pressing down from every direction. A low growl rumbled deep in the bear's throat, not loud, not threatening, but deliberate. It was a sound that vibrated through the ground and into his bones. His stomach tightened, the warning was clear: respect the space, honor the moment, or face consequences. But there was no immediate aggression, no sudden leap or swipe, just a calm assertion of control. The bear was setting boundaries, and the man was acutely aware that he had entered territory that wasn't his to claim. Then, movement from the side again. He caught a glimpse of a smaller figure darting between trees. Another bear? Or perhaps a cub? His mind raced. If there was a cub nearby, everything changed. Mothers in the wild are ferociously protective. His pulse quickened with dread. The bear in front of him shifted slightly, positioning itself between him and whatever was in the underbrush. Protective? Cautious? Again, he couldn't tell. He tried to recall every piece of advice ever given by rangers, every survival guide, every documentary he had studied. Stay calm, avoid eye contact, speak softly, back away slowly. But this was unlike anything he had read or seen. The bear wasn't acting purely on instinct, it seemed to be making decisions, weighing options, almost negotiating without words. He wondered if the creature recognized him as an individual, separate from all the humans who had trespassed before. The sun climbed higher, casting shifting patterns of light through the trees. Sweat dampened his hair and the back of his neck. His muscles tensed, ready to react to any sudden movement. Yet, paradoxically, he felt a strange connection, an unspoken dialogue forming in the space between them. It was fragile and tentative, but unmistakable. He could sense the bear's awareness of him, the same way he felt aware of it. A sudden crack of a branch nearby made him jump. The bear flinched slightly, ears flicking. But instead of advancing or attacking, it simply watched, its eyes narrowing. It was teaching him something, though he didn't yet understand what. Fear, caution, respect, they all blended in a dizzying mix. He could not move, could not act rashly. He could only wait and watch. His stomach growled, a reminder of the world beyond this tense standoff, but even hunger felt secondary. Every instinct was focused on survival, on understanding the bear's next move, on reading the subtle cues that could mean the difference between life and death. He shifted slightly, testing a retreat to the left, and the bear mirrored his movement with a calm, measured adjustment of its own. A silent dance began on the forest path, each waiting, each testing, each observing. And then he saw it. A glint of movement behind a fallen log, the flash of brown fur, small and tentative. A cub. His breath caught. The bear was not just blocking the path, it was guarding. Protecting something precious hidden nearby. The tension multiplied, his fear compounded with awe and admiration. He realized now that any misstep could provoke a violent response, not out of malice, but out of instinctive devotion to its offspring. The bear let out a low, deep growl that seemed to echo through the forest. The cub stepped fully into view, eyes wide, trembling slightly. The man froze, realizing that the next move, his move, would determine not just his fate, but the bear's trust, and possibly the life of the cub. And then, in a heartbeat, the mother bear did something he could never have predicted. The air was thick with tension, every sound magnified in the quiet of the forest. The man's heartbeat drummed in his ears, a relentless, almost deafening rhythm that matched the weight of the situation. He could see the cub clearly now, a small, trembling figure barely a quarter of the size of the massive grizzly in front of him. Its wide eyes reflected fear and curiosity, scanning the human as if weighing him as a threat. The bear's presence, enormous and immovable, seemed to create a protective shield around the cub. Then, unexpectedly, the mother bear shifted slightly, not forward in aggression, but sideways, creating a narrow gap in the path. The gesture was subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable to the observant man. It wasn't retreat, it was a calculated move, an invitation, or perhaps a test. His mind raced. Could it be trying to communicate something? Was it warning him, or was it offering him a choice? He had heard stories of bears showing surprising intelligence, even what some scientists called empathy, but never had he witnessed it firsthand. He swallowed hard, nerves strung tight, and slowly stepped forward, careful not to rush. The bear's eyes followed him with unwavering intensity. Every muscle in its body was coiled, yet not in attack, more in vigilance, in readiness. He realized that this standoff was no longer just about territory or fear. It was a subtle negotiation of trust, a moment that demanded absolute respect and understanding. The cub, emboldened by the mother's subtle shift, took a tentative step onto the path. Its small claws made soft, almost hesitant marks on the dirt. The man's breath caught. He froze again, realizing that any sudden motion could be interpreted as a threat. Yet the cub's curiosity was undeniable. It sniffed the air between them, sniffed the human, and then glanced back at its mother, seeking guidance. And then the twist happened. The bear lowered its massive head to the cub's level, touching its nose gently to the ground, and then, incredibly, it nudged the man's backpack. A message, he realized instantly, not aggressive, not threatening, but instructive, almost like a wordless command. It was teaching him, observe, respect, wait, and understand. His pulse quickened, a mixture of awe and apprehension coursing through him. The bear was communicating without sound, guiding him through the delicate intricacies of coexistence. He slowly removed one hand from his strap, extending it slightly, palm open, in a universal gesture of peace. The cub mirrored his movement in its small, tentative way, stepping closer to sniff his hand. The mother bear remained vigilant, her massive form unwavering, but there was a shift in her posture, a subtle relaxation that suggested cautious approval. The moment was fragile, teetering on the edge of unpredictability, yet charged with an almost magical understanding. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. He carefully studied the bear, noting the deep scars along its flank, the wear and tear of survival etched into its fur. Each mark, each patch of missing hair, told a story of battles fought and endured. And yet, despite the potential for danger, there was a profound intelligence in its gaze, a recognition of his intentions, of his respect for its territory. The man realized that this encounter was not random. It was deliberate. The bear had chosen to interact, to test him, to see if he could navigate the delicate balance between fear and respect. The cub, sensing the safety implied by its mother's stance, stepped fully onto the path and began circling the man cautiously. Its small, padded feet made soft sounds against the forest floor, and its wide eyes never left his. The man crouched slightly, matching the cub's level without appearing threatening. He whispered again, gentle words meant to soothe rather than command, "It's okay. You're safe." The forest seemed to exhale around them, a subtle shift in atmosphere that suggested an unspoken truce forming. Then, unexpectedly, the mother bear took a step closer to the man, bridging the narrow gap. Every nerve in his body screamed caution. The bear's claws dug lightly into the dirt, muscles taut, yet it moved deliberately, slowly, maintaining perfect balance between dominance and protection. The man froze, heart hammering, aware that any sudden move could shatter the fragile understanding that had begun to form. And yet, the bear did not advance aggressively. Instead, it sniffed the air around him, a deliberate, almost ceremonial gesture that seemed to acknowledge him as a participant in this encounter, not an intruder to be eliminated. The realization hit him: this wasn't a random confrontation. The bear had a reason for standing in his path. Something in the surrounding forest had demanded its attention, something that required both caution and vigilance. He scanned the underbrush, trying to anticipate what might be hidden among the shadows. Was there another predator nearby? Or perhaps a den, a hidden refuge for the cub? The possibilities swirled in his mind, each more dangerous than the last. The cub's curiosity increased, and it inched closer, brushing against his leg with delicate, cautious movements. The man froze, barely daring to breathe, yet feeling a strange surge of connection, a bridge forming between human and animal. The bear's gaze never left him, intense and unyielding, yet the subtle relaxation in its stance suggested an unspoken understanding. He was not just being tolerated, he was being tested, observed, and perhaps accepted. And then, the unexpected happened again. The bear turned its massive head slightly and gestured with a subtle movement of its paw toward a narrow side trail hidden by thick underbrush. The man's pulse spiked. Was this an invitation or a warning? He realized that the bear was communicating more than simply blocking his path. It was guiding him, teaching him, showing him a route that could allow safe passage without threat to the cub. His mind raced, considering the implications. The bear wasn't just a wild animal, it was an intelligent, sentient presence, capable of understanding, of guiding, of influencing behavior. He took a cautious step toward the side trail, mindful to maintain a respectful distance. The cub followed, curious and tentative, while the mother bear remained at the main path, eyes fixed on him with unbroken intensity. Every step felt monumental, every movement deliberate. He realized that the bear's behavior was not just about instinct, it was about communication, about understanding the nuances of coexistence in the wilderness. As he edged along the side trail, he caught sight of something partially hidden among the trees, a small grove, flattened in patches as if used frequently by the bears. Perhaps a feeding area, or a temporary refuge. The realization was staggering. He had not simply encountered a bear, he had stumbled into a microcosm of its world, a realm where every movement, every glance, every choice carried meaning. The mother bear's growl was low and subtle, a reminder that boundaries still existed, that respect was paramount. He froze, letting the weight of her presence sink in. The cub brushed past his side, and he felt an odd warmth, a connection bridging species, a fragile trust forming in the heart of the wilderness. And yet, despite the tentative bond, danger still lingered in the air. One misstep, one thoughtless movement, could unravel the delicate truce. Just as he began to navigate the narrow side trail, a rustle from deeper in the forest made both man and bear tense. The cub froze mid-step, ears perked. The mother bear growled softly, a sound that was protective, yet filled with warning. And then, through the dappled sunlight and mist, he caught sight of a second, massive shadow emerging from the trees. A figure that would change everything he thought he knew about this encounter. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The rustling of leaves and snapping of twigs reverberated through the still morning air like thunder in a canyon. He froze instantly, every muscle locked, every nerve electrified. The cub pressed close to his leg, instinctively seeking protection, while the mother bear planted herself firmly between him and whatever was emerging. His mind raced. The shadow he had glimpsed through the trees was moving deliberately, massive in size, and unmistakably powerful. The sheer scale suggested it was no ordinary animal, it had the bulk of another adult grizzly. His heart pounded so violently that he could feel it echoing in his throat. He had entered the wilderness expecting solitude and perhaps a little adventure, but now he faced a scenario that exceeded every hypothetical he had ever considered. One misstep could provoke a violent charge from either bear. Yet he also understood that aggression wasn't inevitable. The mother's previous gestures had hinted at intelligence, negotiation, and boundary setting. Still, the unknown factor, the second bear, was uncharted territory. The shadow emerged fully. It was indeed another adult grizzly, slightly smaller than the mother but no less imposing. Its eyes were sharp, scanning the area, immediately locking on to the cub. Its gaze hardened, revealing instinctive territorial awareness. The man realized instantly this was a male, likely the cub's father, or at least a dominant bear asserting authority over the area. His stomach churned. The situation had transformed from a tense standoff into a complex social dynamic among the bears, with him caught squarely in the middle. He could see the mother bear's posture stiffen. Her muscles coiled under thick fur, and the growl deepened, a resonant, vibrating sound that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. The cub whimpered softly, frozen in the middle of the narrow path. The man's pulse raced, yet he forced himself to breathe steadily, recalling every piece of survival training he had absorbed over the years. Do not run. Do not make sudden movements. Keep your body language neutral. The second bear paused a few feet away, sniffing the air, evaluating the situation. The mother bear did not advance, but her stance was defensive, protective. The man realized that if he misread the cues, he could inadvertently trigger a confrontation. But he also understood that the bears were communicating with one another, through posture, growls, and subtle gestures. This wasn't merely instinctive reaction, it was a sophisticated social negotiation unfolding right in front of him. He shifted slightly, testing the stability of the side trail. Every movement had to be deliberate. He was aware of how a single false step might be interpreted as a threat to the cub. The male bear moved slightly, pawing at the dirt, marking his presence, asserting his dominance, but not advancing aggressively. The mother growled again, deeper and more resonant, and the cub moved closer to him, brushing his leg in silent trust. The man felt a mix of awe and fear. Here were two apex predators negotiating, and he was the unexpected human witness, a participant in a natural ritual that had been occurring for millennia. Minutes dragged on like hours. The second bear's gaze shifted, flicking between the man, the cub, and the mother. He noticed the subtle signs of communication between the bears, the tail flicks, the posture changes, the shifts in weight. Every detail mattered. The man realized that his presence had become a part of their dynamic, a variable they were factoring into their behavior. He had stumbled into a complex social calculus, and his survival depended on respect, patience, and observation. He slowly crouched, bringing his body lower to the ground, signaling neutrality. The cub sniffed him again, emboldened by the mother's careful monitoring. The second bear, after a long pause, moved closer, sniffing at the edge of the path. The mother remained vigilant, but the growls subsided slightly, replaced by a low rumble of assessment. The tension was palpable. Each bear was evaluating the other, calculating the risk, while the man was acutely aware that his every breath, every micro-movement, was being scrutinized. The forest around them seemed to fade into the background. Even the sound of the nearby stream, which had been constant throughout his hike, felt distant, as if the bear's presence had warped the atmosphere. He could feel the raw energy of nature pressing in from all directions. The male bear sniffed toward the cub and then back at the mother, a subtle, almost imperceptible gesture of acknowledgement. The man understood this was no longer just a standoff, it was a social negotiation, and he had been unexpectedly drawn into it. He took another careful step toward the side trail, measuring distance with each movement. The cub followed, tentative but curious. The mother bear adjusted slightly, her body creating a narrow corridor, still alert, still protective, still commanding. The male bear stepped closer, sniffing again, then turned slightly, as if to acknowledge the man's passive, non-threatening posture. The delicate balance was maintained, but he knew it could collapse at any moment. The man's mind raced with questions. Why had the mother bear initially blocked his path? Was this a test of character, a measure of his respect for the cub and the wilderness? Or was it simply instinct amplified by circumstance? The subtle behaviors he had witnessed, nudges, gestures, pauses, growls, hinted at intelligence and emotional awareness beyond what he had expected from the wild. He realized that fear alone wasn't enough to navigate this encounter. He had to be attuned, aware, and responsive to the nuanced communication of the bears. Then, the twist deepened. The male bear made a low, almost playful vocalization, a sound that didn't carry aggression but curiosity. The cub perked up, ears twitching. The mother bear's stance softened slightly, muscles relaxing while still maintaining control. It was a moment of subtle negotiation, almost surreal in its complexity. The man could hardly believe what he was witnessing, a live demonstration of bear social structure, trust, and perhaps even empathy, with him at the center of the scene. He realized something crucial: his survival depended not on flight or dominance, but on patience, respect, and observation. Every action had to be deliberate, every movement calculated, every sound measured. He adjusted his backpack, shifted his weight slightly, and whispered gently, "I won't harm you. I just want to pass." The cub's gaze softened, the mother remained watchful, and the male stepped back slightly, as if granting conditional permission. The moment of fragile truce was palpable, but the air remained thick with tension. The man's adrenaline surged. He could feel his muscles coiling and releasing with each heartbeat. He was aware that he was not merely witnessing a moment in the wilderness, he was participating in it, engaging with forces that had existed long before humans had set foot on the trail. The bear's intelligence, awareness, and protective instincts were a living testament to the power and majesty of the wild. As he carefully edged forward along the side trail, a sudden, piercing noise shattered the tension, a distant, yet unmistakable, human cry from deeper in the forest. Both bears froze instantly, ears perked, muscles taut. The cub whimpered, pressing closer to him. The man's heart leapt. Who else was out here? And more importantly, how would the bears react to the presence of another human in their territory? The distant cry echoed through the dense forest, bouncing off tree trunks and rocks, amplifying the sense of urgency and danger. The man's chest tightened, and his heart thumped like a drum in his ears. The cub pressed against him instinctively, sensing the tension. The mother bear stiffened, muscles coiled beneath her thick fur, while the male bear's stance grew more rigid, his gaze fixed on the source of the sound. The forest that had moments ago seemed alive with cautious curiosity now thrummed with raw, anticipatory energy. He had no idea who or what had made the cry. A fellow hiker, perhaps, lost in the wilderness? Or something else entirely? The uncertainty gnawed at him. Any additional human presence could provoke aggression from the bears, especially with the cub nearby. Their instincts were clear: protect the young, control the territory, and eliminate potential threats. The man's survival depended on his ability to navigate not only his interactions with the bears but also the unpredictable behavior of another human in the same environment. He froze, instinctively crouching lower, trying to make himself smaller and less threatening. The cub's tiny body pressed even closer, and he whispered softly, trying to calm both himself and the animal, "Stay calm. It's okay. We can handle this." But even as he spoke, he could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins, sharpening his senses, making every sound and movement in the forest feel magnified. The mother bear let out a low, warning growl, resonating deep in the chest, a sound that carried authority and caution. The male bear's ears twitched, and he slowly shifted, positioning himself between the man, the cub, and the emerging threat. Every instinct in the man's body screamed that this could escalate into violence if either human or bear misstepped. Yet he also understood that sudden movement could be fatal. He remained motionless, eyes darting subtly to track the progress of whatever or whoever was approaching. Through the dappled sunlight filtering between the trees, he finally saw it, another hiker, perhaps mid-30s, stumbling through the underbrush, voice panicked, clearly unaware of the bear standoff unfolding. The man's stomach twisted. Any sudden appearance could provoke a charge from either bear. He quickly assessed the environment. The side trail offered some cover, but it was narrow and treacherous. If he moved too quickly to intervene, he might startle the bears, or worse, the approaching hiker. The cub whimpered softly, and the mother growled again, louder this time, signaling a higher level of alert. She shifted forward slightly, her massive paws crushing the earth beneath them, a clear message: do not come closer. The male bear mirrored her posture, a silent dance of intimidation and territorial assertion. The man's mind raced. He had to prevent a catastrophic encounter. One wrong move could result in serious injury or death for any of them. He slowly extended a hand toward the cub, attempting to reassure the animal while maintaining absolute stillness. The cub sniffed his hand, eyes wide with uncertainty, then pressed back against him, seeking protection. The man's pulse raced. He knew that the bears were acutely aware of his intentions. Any hint of aggression or panic could provoke an immediate response. He had entered the wilderness expecting solitude, but now he found himself in the middle of a high-stakes, life-or-death negotiation between humans and apex predators. The distant hiker stumbled further into view, and the man realized he had mere seconds to act. He couldn't let the newcomer advance blindly, risking the safety of both the cub and the bear's fragile trust in him. He slowly stood, hands raised slightly to show non-threat, and called out in a calm, measured voice, "Hey! Stay back. Don't come any closer." His voice cut through the forest, firm but non-threatening. The approaching hiker froze, eyes widening as he took in the scene: two massive bears, a small cub, and another human frozen on the narrow trail. Panic flashed across his face, and he opened his mouth to speak, perhaps to call out or move. The man raised his hand again, emphasizing calm, caution, and respect for the situation. The bears responded in synchrony. The mother growled, a resonant warning, and planted herself firmly in front of the cub. The male bear stepped slightly to the side, creating a subtle corridor, but his eyes never left the approaching human. The cub, sensing the tension, pressed close to the man's side, small paws brushing against his leg. The man's mind raced. He realized that the trust the bears had begun to place in him could be shattered in an instant by the newcomer's ignorance or panic. He spoke again, voice low, deliberate, "Stop. Don't come any closer." Wait. Stay calm. His words were meant to instruct both the hiker and himself in controlled movement. The cub twitched nervously, ears flat, sensing the rising tension. The mother bear's growl deepened, a sound that vibrated through the earth, commanding immediate attention. The male bear remained tense but stationary, observing, ready to react. Time stretched, each second heavy with anticipation. The approaching hiker slowly raised his hands, signaling surrender, and took a hesitant step backward. The man exhaled silently, relief washing over him, but he knew the situation was far from resolved. The bears were still alert, every muscle taut, every claw pressing into the dirt with subtle authority. He had to maintain the delicate balance until the other human was safely at a distance. The cub, emboldened slightly by the standoff, sniffed the air and took a careful step forward, brushing against the man's leg again. He whispered softly, soothing both the cub and the momentary panic that still lingered, "It's okay. We're okay. Just stay calm." The mother bear's stance softened slightly, a gesture of tentative trust, while the male bear's attention shifted between the cub and the man, assessing the risk and calculating the next moves. The distant hiker continued retreating slowly, but his panicked movements made the bears tense again. The man stepped forward slightly, signaling calm and control, bridging the gap without provoking aggression. The cub stayed close, trusting his guidance. The mother bear growled again, lower this time, almost a rumble of affirmation, as if acknowledging that he understood the rules of this fragile interaction. The forest seemed suspended in time, every sound amplified, the distant call of birds, the rustle of leaves under the retreating hiker's feet, the faint trickle of a nearby stream. The man's senses were hyper-alert, acutely aware of every detail, every shift in posture, every twitch of the bear's ears. He understood that the standoff was not just physical, it was psychological, an intricate negotiation of trust, respect, and caution. And then, just as the last steps of the human faded into the underbrush, a sudden movement caught the man's eye. The cub darted forward, following a subtle scent trail, while the mother bear shifted again, alert and protective. The male bear stepped closer to the path, asserting his presence, muscles rippling beneath fur, eyes sharp and calculating. The man realized that even though the immediate threat had passed, the forest's tension was far from dissipated. Something else was stirring, something he could not yet see. Before he could react to the cub's sudden movement, the mother bear let out a sharp, commanding growl, and the male bear lunged, not aggressively, but with startling speed, toward a dense patch of underbrush. The man froze, heart in his throat, realizing that whatever had emerged from the shadows now was not a human. It was something far more dangerous, and the next moments could decide the fate of all three of them. The forest erupted in a sudden flurry of movement. The male bear lunged toward the dense underbrush with a speed that made the man's breath catch in his throat. The cub squealed, darting closer to him instinctively, its small body trembling. The mother bear responded instantly, muscles rippling beneath her thick fur, growl reverberating through the forest like a drumbeat of authority and warning. The man's pulse raced, his senses hyper-focused, as every rustle, snap, and whistle of the wind seemed magnified into potential threat. He couldn't see what the male had targeted. The underbrush was thick, a tangle of roots, fallen branches, and shadowed foliage. But the male's energy, precise and controlled, hinted at a predator or some other urgent danger lurking just out of view. The man realized immediately he was witnessing raw wilderness instincts in action, a dance of survival and protection, and he had to navigate it carefully. One wrong step, and he could provoke a defensive charge from either bear, or worse, be caught in the chaos between them. The mother bear positioned herself strategically, forming a protective arc around the cub and the man. Her eyes never left the male's focus, muscles coiled, ears swiveling to catch every sound. The cub pressed against the man, small but determined, sensing his role as a secondary protector. He whispered softly, hands barely moving, trying to maintain calm, "It's okay. Stay close. Don't panic." Every word was deliberate, each movement calculated to avoid triggering aggression while maintaining reassurance. A sharp crack of a branch sounded from deeper in the brush. The male bear's head snapped toward the sound, nostrils flaring, claws digging into the soft earth. His growl was low, guttural, full of dominance but laced with tension. The mother bear responded with a counter-growl, a clear signal of authority and caution. The man could feel the forest around him vibrating with energy, each creature attuned to the unfolding confrontation, every leaf and twig participating in the suspense. He could see flashes of brown fur, movement that suggested not one but multiple intruders, smaller animals perhaps, or another unexpected predator. The male bear's aggressive lunge had been precise, calculated, aimed at neutralizing or warning off whatever had entered the cub's territory. The mother remained defensive but composed, an anchor of stability amidst the chaos. The man's survival instincts were in overdrive. He knew any rash action, forward, backward, or sideways, could trigger disaster. He took a measured breath, forcing his body into slow, deliberate movements. He shifted slightly to the side, creating a buffer for the cub while keeping his posture non-threatening. The cub responded immediately, sniffing his hand and pressing closer, a subtle bond forming in this high-stakes scenario. He realized that trust, between human and bear, was fragile, a fragile thread stretched taut over a precipice of instinct and survival. The male bear suddenly snapped forward, claws swiping at the underbrush with astonishing precision. The man caught a glimpse of a coyote, a lithe, nervous predator, attempting to steal a small cache of berries near the cub's hideout. The bear's reaction was immediate, defensive yet measured. The mother shifted slightly, growling low and deep, while the male lunged again, forcing the coyote to retreat. The man's chest heaved with adrenaline. He had never witnessed such coordinated, intelligent defense in the wild firsthand. He realized, with awe and fear combined, that this was more than instinct. The bears were communicating silently, coordinating with each other and subtly including him in their protective dance. Every movement, every growl, every glance was calculated, precise, an elegant ballet of life and survival. He felt a surge of respect, humility, and awe for the intelligence and emotional depth of these creatures. The coyote, now retreating, glanced back, sensing the authority of the bears. The male took a step back, muscles relaxing slightly, while the mother maintained her vigilant stance. The cub, emboldened by their coordinated protection, scampered toward a safer patch of underbrush, brushing against the man for reassurance. He whispered again, guiding the cub gently, "You're safe now. We're okay." But the forest's tension hadn't fully dissipated. The distant sound of human voices, muffled and panicked, echoed once more. The man's heart leapt. Another hiker, perhaps, or the same one returning. The mother bear stiffened, muscles coiling beneath fur, ears swiveling toward the sound. The male's attention snapped to the new auditory stimulus, claws pressing into the soil, stance alert and ready. The man realized that time was critical. If the human approached without awareness, it could provoke a dangerous encounter, disrupting the fragile trust that had begun to form between him and the bears. He stepped slightly forward, raising his hands slowly to show calm and neutrality, trying to influence both the bear's perception and the human's behavior. "Stay back. Please. Don't come any closer." His voice cut through the forest like a measured command, careful not to startle the animals while conveying urgency. The cub pressed closer, small paws brushing against his legs. He could feel its tiny heartbeat trembling through the contact. The mother bear growled softly, a low rumble of caution mixed with protection, signaling that he had understood the unspoken rules. The male bear shifted slightly, positioning himself strategically, still alert but now with subtle acknowledgement of the man's presence and intentions. The human voice grew louder, frantic. The man took a calculated risk, stepping into the line of sight between the approaching human and the bears, arms raised, body language deliberate, calm. "Stop. Wait. Do not come closer." His words were firm but non-threatening, emphasizing caution and control. The cub responded immediately, pressing close for reassurance, while the mother remained vigilant, growl rumbling beneath her breath. The male bear's movements became more deliberate, signaling that the immediate threat was being assessed. The cub's trust in him was evident, and he realized that his role had shifted from mere observer to active participant in the bear's social dynamic. Every micro-movement he made influenced the behavior of the bears, subtly shaping the outcome of this tense forest encounter. Then, a sudden rustle closer to the underbrush drew everyone's attention. The male bear lunged instinctively, swiping the area with precision. The cub squealed, the mother growled in coordination, and the man froze, heart racing. It wasn't another human this time, it was a fallen log shifting under the weight of something unseen. Relief mingled with adrenaline, but the danger hadn't fully passed. The bear's protective instincts remained heightened, their attention unwavering. The man exhaled, slowly lowering his arms, keeping a careful balance between motion and stillness. He whispered soothingly to the cub, who pressed closer, trust evident in every tiny movement. The mother bear remained alert, body coiled like a spring, while the male settled slightly but still watched the surroundings. He realized that the lesson was clear: patience, respect, and careful observation were essential for navigating not only the wilderness but the emotional intelligence of apex predators. Just as he began to move cautiously along the side trail with the cub, the mother bear's ears twitched sharply, and her growl escalated. Out of the shadows, a new figure emerged, not a human, not a coyote, but another bear, much larger, its presence commanding and threatening. The man froze, understanding instantly that this encounter was about to reach a critical turning point, one that could redefine trust, survival, and the fragile bond forming in the wilderness. The forest seemed to shrink around him, trees leaning inward as if pressing in on the narrow trail. The man froze, eyes wide, heart pounding as he took in the newcomer, a massive bear, far larger than the male and female he had been navigating with. Its dark fur rippled with power, eyes sharp and calculating, nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air. Every instinct in his body screamed that this was not just another bear, it was a dominant presence, perhaps the alpha of this region, and its sudden appearance shifted the delicate balance of control entirely. The cub pressed instinctively against his leg, tiny claws scratching the dirt in tension. The mother bear growled deeply, her voice vibrating through the trees, a clear signal of both protection and warning. The male bear shifted as well, muscles taut, his eyes flicking toward the newcomer with a mixture of caution and recognition. The man could feel the energy in the air, a charged, almost tangible force of life, instinct, and raw power. He realized immediately that any movement, any sound could trigger a catastrophic reaction. The larger bear advanced slowly, deliberately, each pawfall measured and firm against the soft earth. Its gaze swept over the trio, the man, the cub, the mother bear, assessing threat, strength, and intent. The mother remained positioned between him and the newcomer, her massive body a living shield. The male stayed slightly behind, coiled, ready to respond if necessary, while the cub clung to him instinctively. Every second stretched painfully, the suspense almost unbearable. He understood, with sudden clarity, that the bear's presence wasn't random. It was asserting dominance, testing the boundaries, and enforcing the social hierarchy of the forest. The mother's protective growls increased in intensity, a warning to both the newcomer and the man. She shifted forward slightly, planting her massive paws firmly, tail lashing subtly, a delicate but unmistakable display of authority and caution. The man's mind raced. He had survived close encounters before, but this was unlike anything he had imagined. Survival here required more than knowledge or caution, it required intuition, respect, and an understanding of the nuanced, almost emotional intelligence of these apex predators. His pulse surged, yet he forced himself to remain still, steadying his breath, slowing the frantic pounding of adrenaline in his chest. The newcomer paused, nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air again. Its eyes were fixed on the cub, a tiny, vulnerable creature, yet its stance wasn't overtly aggressive. There was calculation in every movement, an intelligence that sent a shiver down his spine. The cub whimpered softly, pressing against him, and he instinctively crouched lower, making himself smaller, less threatening. "It's okay," he whispered gently, "just stay calm. We'll get through this." The mother bear let out another growl, longer and more resonant this time, asserting both dominance and protection. The male bear mirrored her movements, subtly positioning himself to flank the newcomer if necessary. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the rustle of leaves and distant bird calls fading into near silence. Every being in the vicinity, human, bear, and unseen creatures alike, was caught in the intensity of the moment. Suddenly, the newcomer took a single, deliberate step forward. The mother bear responded immediately, muscles tensing, claws pressing lightly into the dirt, growl escalating. The man's stomach twisted. He understood that the next moments could determine the outcome, a peaceful negotiation of presence, or a violent clash of forces. The cub whimpered louder, instinctively seeking his protection. He lowered a hand slowly, letting it rest gently near the cub, a silent gesture of reassurance and calm. The newcomer sniffed again, eyes flicking between the mother and male bears. The man noticed subtle signs of recognition, the way the male's ears twitched, the mother's posture slightly relaxed yet ready. This was not a random encounter. These bears knew each other, understood the hierarchy, and were communicating through body language, growls, and subtle gestures. The man's awe deepened even as fear gripped him. He was witnessing a living social dynamic, raw and unpredictable, and he was at its center. The larger bear's head dipped slightly, nostrils flaring, and it let out a low rumble, a sound resonating through the ground itself. The mother growled in response, a longer, layered warning that spoke of protection, caution, and dominance. The male mirrored the tension, every muscle poised for immediate action. The cub pressed closer, almost trembling against him. He whispered again, steadying both himself and the cub, "We can do this. Stay calm. Trust me." Time seemed suspended. The newcomer took another step, this one slower, testing, deliberate. The mother shifted, subtly positioning herself between the cub and the intruder. The male bear responded with a calculated stance, chest low, tail flicking in communication. The forest was electric with tension, every sound amplified, the crunch of leaves, the snap of twigs, the distant call of a hawk. Yet each sound was woven into the intricate ballet of survival unfolding before him. And then, the unexpected happened. The newcomer stopped abruptly, sniffed the air, and instead of advancing aggressively, it let out a series of soft, almost curious vocalizations. The mother growled lowly, cautious but less threatening now, as if assessing the newcomer's intentions. The male relaxed slightly, while the cub twitched nervously but remained close. The man's pulse surged with relief, tempered by awe. These weren't just instinctual reactions, they were complex, layered, and, in a strange way, almost emotional. The larger bear shifted its massive weight, stepping aside slightly. Its posture, while commanding, suggested it was allowing passage, acknowledging the presence of the trio, testing trust, and perhaps even demonstrating recognition of boundaries. The man exhaled slowly, muscles unclenching, realizing that the delicate balance had shifted but was still intact. He whispered gently, encouraging the cub, "It's okay. Everything's fine. We're safe for now." The cub sniffed the air, small tail twitching, before pressing closer. The mother bear's stance softened further, though she remained alert, ready to react if necessary. The male mirrored her posture, a coiled readiness without overt aggression. The forest, though still charged with tension, seemed to allow a fragile moment of peace, a brief window of coexistence in the heart of the wilderness. The man understood that this encounter was a profound lesson. Survival was not merely about avoidance or fear, it was about respect, observation, and subtle communication. The bears had demonstrated intelligence, emotional awareness, and social cohesion, all within moments of life-or-death tension. He felt humbled, honored, and acutely aware of his place in this intricate ecosystem. As he finally began to edge forward along the side trail with the cub, a sudden, sharp rustle erupted from the underbrush behind him. The mother bear whipped her massive head around, growl deepening, while the male and newcomer both tensed. The cub froze, pressed tightly against him. And then, a shadow moved between the trees, larger than any bear he had seen that morning. Something entirely unexpected was emerging from the forest depths, and he realized with a sinking heart that the true test of trust, survival, and instinct was only just beginning. The shadow shifted again, darker and more ominous, slipping silently between the trees. The man froze, heart hammering, muscles taut, as his eyes traced the movement. The mother bear growled, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through the earth. The male mirrored her tension, body coiled, claws pressing into the forest floor. The cub pressed tighter against his leg, tiny paws scratching nervously. The man's mind raced, every second now was critical. One false move, one careless gesture, could provoke a catastrophic confrontation. He realized he needed a strategy, and quickly. Survival in the wilderness required more than instinct, it demanded calculation, observation, and understanding of animal behavior. He couldn't fight, he couldn't outrun, and he certainly couldn't bluff his way through this. But he could communicate intent, establish boundaries, and leverage the fragile trust that had begun forming between him, the cub, and the mother bear. Every action had to be deliberate. The newcomer emerged fully from the shadows. It was larger than any bear he had encountered before, massive, imposing, and undeniably dominant. Its eyes locked on the cub first, then shifted to him. Its posture was alert but not overtly aggressive, this was a measured presence, a test of boundaries rather than an immediate threat. The mother bear's growl intensified, her body leaning forward, muscles coiled like springs, while the male bear subtly shifted to flank the intruder, ensuring the cub's safety. The man exhaled slowly, forcing his body into calm, measured movements. He lowered himself slightly, hands visible but relaxed, signaling non-threat. "Stay calm," he whispered to the cub, who pressed closer, tiny body trembling. The cub sniffed his hand, as if drawing reassurance from human warmth. He realized that the emotional bond they were forming could be as crucial to survival as any physical strategy. Fear, panic, or hesitation could ripple outward, influencing the behavior of the bears. He began to analyze the newcomer's behavior. Its eyes were observant, nostrils flaring with scent, ears flicking toward every sound. It wasn't looking for a fight, it was assessing dominance, gauging the mother bear's authority, and evaluating him, the human, as a factor in the unfolding social hierarchy. The man understood that his survival depended on subtle cues, posture, movement, and tone of voice. Any abrupt motion could trigger instinctual aggression. He slowly shifted a foot to the side, maintaining a low, non-threatening posture. The cub followed, stepping carefully beside him. The mother bear's growl softened slightly, signaling awareness of the deliberate, cautious movements. The male bear's posture relaxed marginally as well, acknowledging that the man's intent was not hostile. The newcomer paused, nostrils flaring, eyes flicking back and forth between the mother, male, cub, and man. Time stretched taut. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the wind still, every leaf and twig poised in anticipation. He realized the importance of controlling his own fear. Adrenaline surged, but he forced himself to slow his heartbeat, to synchronize his movements with the rhythm of the forest. One wrong move could cascade into chaos. Survival here was a matter of subtlety, patience, and respect. The cub whimpered softly, prompting him to crouch even lower, arms extended subtly as if to shield the child. The mother bear adjusted slightly, coiling around them protectively, eyes never leaving the larger bear. The male flanked, tense but ready to respond. The forest's energy was a tangible force, every movement and growl carrying layers of meaning. He understood that they were not merely reacting, they were communicating, negotiating, testing, and teaching. The larger bear took a slow step forward, muscles rippling, claws sinking lightly into the forest floor. The mother growled, a layered sound combining authority and caution. The male mirrored her stance, chest low, tail flicking in measured signaling. The cub pressed against him instinctively, and he whispered again, soft and steady, "We can do this. Just stay calm. Trust me." Every syllable was deliberate, conveying control, reassurance, and awareness. The newcomer paused, sniffing the air, nostrils flaring. It seemed to weigh options, reading body language, evaluating risk. The mother bear did not advance but leaned slightly forward, signaling protection without provoking aggression. The male bear's attention never wavered, poised to act if the balance shifted. He realized that the bears were negotiating silently, and his role was to remain neutral, cautious, and supportive of the cub's safety. A rustle from deeper in the forest diverted attention briefly, but the man's eyes remained locked on the larger bear. Every detail mattered, the shift of weight, the flick of an ear, the tension in the shoulders. He took a shallow breath, steadying the cub against his leg. "It's okay," he whispered, "we're okay. Just follow me slowly." The mother growled lowly, almost a response of acknowledgement, while the male mirrored her subtle shift. The newcomer took another careful step, maintaining dominance without aggression. He began to edge along the side trail slowly, ensuring the cub stayed close. The mother bear's body adjusted, creating a protective arc, while the male maintained flanking vigilance. The larger bear followed cautiously, observing, neither attacking nor retreating. The forest seemed alive with tension, a living tableau of instinct, hierarchy, and trust. He understood that survival depended on maintaining this delicate balance until they could move to safer ground. The cub pressed closer, small paws brushing against his legs, trembling slightly. He whispered softly, steadying them both, "We can do this. Just a little more. Stay calm." The mother bear growled, softer this time, as if acknowledging his guidance and maintaining protective vigilance. The male adjusted subtly, allowing him and the cub a narrow corridor to move through the forest. Suddenly, a sharp crack sounded nearby, breaking the fragile rhythm. The mother bear reacted instantly, coiling with tension, growl deepening. The larger bear froze, nostrils flaring, eyes sharp. The male mirrored her reaction, claws pressing into the dirt. The cub whimpered softly, pressing even closer. He realized that every sound, every movement in the forest was now a potential trigger, and his ability to remain calm and deliberate was the only factor keeping the delicate balance intact. He took a measured breath, exhaled slowly, and whispered again, "We're safe. Just follow my lead." The cub sniffed his hand, ears twitching, sensing his control over the immediate danger. The mother bear's stance softened marginally, while the male mirrored her adjustment. The larger bear took a cautious step back, nostrils flaring, reassessing the situation. The forest, though still tense, allowed a brief moment of fragile equilibrium. He realized something profound: survival was not merely about physical avoidance or dominance, it was about respect, patience, and understanding. The bears were demonstrating intelligence, emotional awareness, and complex social dynamics, and he had to align himself with their rhythm to navigate safely. Every movement he made, every breath, every gesture, contributed to the unfolding negotiation of trust and safety. Just as he began to feel a fragile sense of relief, a sudden rustle erupted directly behind them. The mother bear's growl intensified, low and threatening, while the male stiffened beside her. The cub froze, pressing tightly against him, and the larger bear's eyes snapped toward the noise. Something else, far more formidable than any coyote or human, was emerging from the forest shadows, and he understood with a sinking feeling that the ultimate test of courage, trust, and survival was about to begin. The forest fell into a tense hush, every leaf, twig, and shadow holding its breath. The rustle that had broken the fragile calm was closer now, sharper, heavier. The man's heart pounded so violently he could feel it in his throat. The cub pressed against him instinctively, shivering, tiny paws digging into his leg. The mother bear's growl intensified, deep and resonant, vibrating through the earth as if warning some invisible intruder. The male bear's stance mirrored hers, every muscle coiled and ready to react. The larger bear, still a step behind, focused on the same source of disturbance, nostrils flaring, eyes keen. A branch snapped sharply nearby. The man froze. He could almost hear the collective heartbeat of the forest, every creature attuned to the danger. He realized immediately, this was no ordinary rustle. Whatever was coming, it was deliberate, large, and potentially more dangerous than anything they had encountered so far. The delicate balance of trust, patience, and survival that he had been building with the bears was now under immediate threat. The cub whimpered softly, tiny body trembling against his leg. He knelt slowly, hands outstretched but not touching the animal, maintaining a calm presence. "It's okay," he whispered, voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Stay calm. We'll get through this. The mother bear responded almost instantly, letting out a low, controlled growl, signaling that she understood his role as both protector and ally. The male bear mirrored her, stance alert but not fully aggressive yet. From the shadows emerged the source of the tension, another massive bear, larger even than the one that had appeared moments earlier. Its fur was darker, its frame broader, and its eyes glimmered with intelligence and dominance. It paused, nostrils flaring, scanning the group. Its presence was commanding, its posture deliberate, testing every individual in this fragile ecosystem. The man's chest tightened, every instinct screamed that this encounter could turn lethal in an instant. The mother bear stepped forward slightly, coiling like a spring, chest low, claws pressing into the earth. Her growl deepened, layered with authority and protection, signaling to the newcomer that this cub, and the man beside it, were under her watch. The male bear mirrored her movements, subtly flanking her, positioning for defense if the balance shifted. The cub pressed closer, small claws brushing against him, trusting instinctively. The man understood that this was a negotiation of survival. He could not interfere physically, any direct action could provoke aggression. His role was to remain calm, provide subtle reassurance to the cub, and respect the boundaries set by the mother bear. Each breath had to be controlled, each movement deliberate, every expression neutral but aware. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, aware of the tension and the stakes. The larger bear took a slow, deliberate step forward, testing the boundaries, nostrils flaring as it gauged the mother's reaction. The mother growled sharply, a sound that reverberated through the trees, a clear message: you will not endanger this cub. The male bear adjusted his stance, tail flicking in communication, muscles coiled, eyes sharp. The man's pulse surged, but he remained steady, whispering softly to the cub, "Stay calm. We can do this. Trust me." The newcomer paused again, sniffing the air, eyes flicking between the cub, the mother, the male, and the man. It seemed to assess not only physical presence but the intricate social dynamics unfolding. The mother's growl softened slightly, still protective but now more measured, while the male mirrored the adjustment. The man realized that the larger bear was testing limits, negotiating dominance, and evaluating whether the cub and he posed any real threat. Suddenly, the larger bear lunged, not aggressively, but with astonishing speed, toward the underbrush. The mother reacted instantly, stepping in front of the cub, claws flexing, growl rising in intensity. The male mirrored her, muscles taut, stance precise. The cub squealed, pressing against the man instinctively. Time slowed, every heartbeat amplified. The man remained frozen, hands slightly extended to maintain calm, whispering softly to the cub, "It's okay. Just stay close. We'll be fine." The movement revealed a hidden danger, a fallen log, precariously balanced and threatening to collapse. The larger bear's lunge was reactive, defensive, aimed at ensuring the log didn't injure the cub or disrupt the fragile balance. The mother's growl softened immediately, acknowledging the newcomer's intent. The male bear relaxed slightly, tension easing but still ready to respond. The cub sniffed the air, tiny body trembling but beginning to trust the protective presence surrounding it. The man's understanding deepened. This encounter wasn't simply about physical dominance, it was a complex interplay of communication, trust, and instinct. The bears were negotiating, protecting, and assessing simultaneously. His role was to align with that rhythm, to maintain calm and provide reassurance to the cub. He could feel the emotional depth of the situation, a silent acknowledgement of intelligence, empathy, and instinct that transcended species. The larger bear paused, standing tall, nostrils flaring, eyes scanning. It wasn't aggressive, it was testing, observing, calculating. The mother growled lowly, tail flicking, maintaining authority without provoking conflict. The male mirrored her stance, creating a coordinated protective presence around the cub and the man. The cub pressed closer, sensing safety through the alignment of human and animal. A sudden rustle to the left drew attention. The larger bear snapped its head, muscles tensing, claws digging into the dirt. The mother growled sharply, positioning herself to block potential threats, while the male mirrored her stance. The man's heart pounded, adrenaline surging, but he remained motionless, whispering gently to the cub, "Stay calm. We're safe. Just stay with me." Time stretched, each second a delicate negotiation of survival. The larger bear stepped back slightly, nostrils flaring, eyes flicking between the mother, male, cub, and man. Its movements were deliberate, intelligent, almost cautious, a display of respect and dominance simultaneously. The mother's growl softened further, signaling acknowledgement and a fragile truce. The male mirrored her, while the cub breathed lightly, sensing safety. The man realized the gravity of what had occurred. Survival was not about aggression or avoidance, it was about observation, communication, and emotional intelligence. The bears had demonstrated trust, hierarchy, and empathy, and he had been an integral part of that delicate ecosystem. Every breath, movement, and whisper had contributed to the outcome. Just as he began to exhale a wave of relief, the larger bear's ears twitched sharply. Its head lifted, eyes locking onto something deeper in the forest. The mother stiffened, growl rising, and the male mirrored her tension. The cub froze against him. Something, unseen but undeniably formidable, was approaching, an ultimate challenge to trust, survival, and the bond that had formed. He realized with a sinking heart that the final test was imminent, one that would either cement their fragile alliance or shatter it completely. The forest trembled with anticipation, every leaf and twig frozen in tense silence. The man's heart hammered in his chest, muscles taut with adrenaline as he pressed the cub close, tiny paws gripping him in instinctive fear. The mother bear's growl had risen to a commanding, resonant rumble, warning any unseen threat that she would protect her cub at all costs. The male bear mirrored her tension, body coiled like a spring, while the larger newcomer bore down from behind, assessing every movement with sharp, calculating eyes. From deeper in the shadows, a low rustling sound grew louder. The unseen force, whatever it was, approached deliberately, each step precise, calculated. The man's mind raced, considering every possible scenario, every potential escape, every subtle gesture that might prevent catastrophe. The cub whimpered softly, pressing against him, and he whispered gently, soothingly, "It's okay. Stay calm. We'll get through this together." Suddenly, the rustle parted, revealing the source, a massive elk, startled and panicked, fleeing the deep forest. Its sudden appearance explained the tension. The larger bear, as dominant and perceptive as it was, had only reacted instinctively to a perceived threat to the cub and its territory. The mother growled, muscles relaxing ever so slightly, while the male mirrored her acknowledgement. The cub sniffed the air, tiny body quivering but beginning to trust the protective presence surrounding him. The man exhaled slowly, relief mingled with awe. He realized that the forest had orchestrated a complex ballet of instinct, hierarchy, and trust, a living ecosystem communicating in subtle, nuanced ways. Survival had hinged not on speed or brute strength, but on observation, patience, and an understanding of emotional intelligence within the wild. The bear's actions had been precise, protective, and profoundly intelligent. The larger bear, having assessed the elk and recognized it as no immediate threat, took a slow, deliberate step back. Its eyes flicked between the cub, the mother, the male bear, and the man, an acknowledgement of the fragile truce that had been established. The mother's growl softened further, her body relaxing but still vigilant, signaling continued protection for the cub. The male mirrored her stance, tail flicking subtly in communication. The cub pressed against the man instinctively, sensing safety in the coordinated presence of the bears. The man knew this was the moment to move carefully. He began edging forward along the narrow trail, hands slightly extended, maintaining a calm, deliberate presence. The cub followed, tiny paws brushing against him, breath steadying under his soothing words. The mother bear maintained her protective arc, while the male flanked slightly behind, both alert but no longer fully coiled for attack. The larger bear followed cautiously, maintaining its imposing presence but no longer threatening. Each step was deliberate, measured, a negotiation of trust and survival. The forest itself seemed to acknowledge the fragile equilibrium, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds, and the filtered sunlight created a cinematic tableau of suspense, release, and fragile harmony. The man whispered to the cub again, "We're okay. Just a few more steps. Trust me." The cub pressed closer, tiny claws gripping his pant leg, sensing the rhythm of reassurance in his voice. They moved slowly, each step building confidence. The mother bear's posture gradually softened, growl diminishing to a low, rhythmic rumble that resonated with reassurance rather than warning. The male bear mirrored her adjustment, stance alert but relaxed. The larger bear, still nearby, maintained a watchful eye but refrained from aggression, acknowledging the boundaries and hierarchy that had been respected. For the first time since entering the forest that morning, the man allowed himself to breathe more fully. He realized the depth of the connection that had formed, not just with the cub and mother, but with the ecosystem itself. Survival had been a matter of trust, patience, and alignment with the natural order. Every decision, every measured movement, had contributed to maintaining a delicate balance between instinct, emotion, and awareness. The cub finally relaxed, small body pressing lightly against him, sniffing the air and testing safety in the subtle, protective presence of the bears. The man whispered softly, "You're safe. See? We did it together." The mother's growl softened completely, her body shifting in a manner that suggested approval, while the male mirrored her, acknowledging that the immediate threat had passed. The larger bear paused, nostrils flaring one last time, then turned back into the deeper forest, leaving the trio in tentative peace. The man allowed the cub to move slightly ahead, ensuring he remained close while observing the mother bear's subtle movements. Every glance, every twitch of muscle, every soft growl communicated the unspoken rules of survival, protection, and trust. He realized that what he had witnessed was more than instinct, it was intelligence, empathy, and nuanced emotional interaction. Slowly, cautiously, they continued along the side trail, moving toward the safety of thicker forest cover. The mother bear maintained her protective stance, occasionally glancing at the cub, while the male mirrored her movements. The cub, tiny and vulnerable but resilient, walked steadily beside him, confidence growing with each measured step. The man whispered again, reinforcing calm and reassurance, "We're safe. Just keep moving. We'll make it through." As the light shifted through the canopy, golden rays piercing the forest mist, the man allowed himself a moment of reflection. He realized the profound lesson of the encounter: survival was not about dominance, fear, or aggression. It was about awareness, emotional intelligence, patience, and trust. The bears had demonstrated instinctive wisdom, coordinated protection, and nuanced social communication, and he had become an active participant in their ecosystem, learning, respecting, and aligning with their rhythm. Eventually, the trail opened into a wider clearing, sunlight spilling across moss-covered rocks and fallen branches. The mother bear finally relaxed fully, allowing the cub to scamper slightly ahead, exploring with curiosity and trust. The male settled nearby, vigilant but calm. The man exhaled deeply, feeling the tension drain, replaced by awe and profound respect. He knelt, letting the cub sniff his hand and brush against him gently, silently acknowledging the bond that had formed. The forest, though still alive with subtle movement, no longer felt threatening. The man knew they were not entirely free from danger, but the immediate crisis had passed. He had learned the depth of instinct, intelligence, and emotion within the wild, and the trust that could be established across species boundaries. The cub, small and brave, had survived, and the bears had demonstrated both protection and respect. He rose slowly, glancing back at the mother and male bears. Their eyes met, a silent acknowledgement of cooperation, trust, and shared survival. The larger bear was gone, the forest restored to a fragile equilibrium, but the lessons of vigilance, patience, and emotional attunement would remain. He whispered softly to the cub, "We made it. You're safe. And we'll never forget this." As they moved towards safety, he realized that the encounter had changed him profoundly. Survival had not been about speed, strength, or aggression, it had been about understanding, patience, empathy, and trust. The bears had shown intelligence and emotional depth far beyond what he had imagined, and the bond that formed with the cub was a testament to the possibility of connection across species. He felt hope, reverence, and an unwavering respect for the wilderness. He knelt beside the cub one final time, speaking softly, "Remember, the wild teaches us patience, trust, and courage. Respect it, and it can teach you lessons you'll never forget." The camera pulled back, capturing the man, cub, and bears in a cinematic tableau of sunlight filtering through the forest canopy, tension dissolved, harmony restored.